What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about the PlayStation because Sony has just announced the third price increase of the PS5, and I want to talk about this because I feel like this is actually beginning to paint a very bad sign for the future of PlayStation, and I want to explain why. Let's get into it. Hi, hope you're having a great day, and if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So I did cover the previous price increases of the PS5 that happened pretty much everywhere except the United States. Places like Europe, Japan, China, Australia, Mexico, they got a pretty significant price increase of about 50 euros, meaning that it went from 500 to 550. A 10% price bump is pretty significant even on its own, but today they got announced that they're increasing the cost in Japan by nearly $90. Now, this sucks because it means this is the third price increase since launch, and a lot of people in the comment section are saying, okay, this is bad because it is a sign about the fact that Sony has so little competition. At this point, PlayStation is the biggest console on the planet. Like, it is just outselling everybody else for this current console generation. In a lot of regions, they're actually outselling the Xbox 4-1. So some people are beginning to say, is this a sign that nobody is pushing back? Is this a sign that, honestly, they don't need to care about price cutting? Typically, with all previous console generations, literally scaling back to the very beginning of video games, things get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. You release a PlayStation 3 or a PlayStation 4, and originally the parts are expensive. It costs a lot of money. You have to build those factories. You got to recoup costs, but obviously, as they manage to make microchips cheaper, the efficiency of just creating the consoles themselves, the price goes down, and it ends up being better for gamers because not only can they get the systems for a lower cost, but a lot of times it ends up meaning that the developers sell more games, so they have more funding. It just basically, price cuts for consoles across the board are not just good. In my opinion, they are mandatory. The fact that now, technically, the standard edition of the PlayStation 5 now costs $200 more than it did at launch in Japan. It's absolutely wild. I did see this tweet and I wanted to focus it. This is obviously an Xbox fanboy who's kind of voicing his frustrations because, yeah, Xbox has had a lot of bad news. I've been covering a lot of the bad news, but a lot of people are saying this is what's going to happen when Xbox doesn't exist. Now, you can harp on this guy and say there's a lot of reasons for price increases. The economy worldwide is bad, but I do think this is an interesting point, which is it's pretty obvious that Xbox is about to die. I've made a lot of videos about this. People get pissed when I cover this, but it's very obvious that Xbox is going to go third party and they're not really going to participate in the console wars anymore. They don't care. They just want to sell games. Xbox has spent hundreds of billions of dollars acquiring studios and buying Activision Blizzard and stuff like that. So I think that what's going to be interesting is when PlayStation is the only next-gen console. Like, the Nintendo Switch will keep existing, whatever the next Nintendo Switch is. There's rumors it's going to be about the power of an Xbox Series X, S, it's going to be stronger. It's going to have less bad graphics. But my point is that when it comes to power pushing games, the PlayStation is going to be the place to go. What happens when there isn't another system? I like this take. This is not a good look for PlayStation, especially for a console that's approaching 4 years old. Typically, you see that price going down, not increasing. I actually pulled this up. The PlayStation 5 subreddit is kind of roasting this because it's pretty bizarre that if you bought your system day one, being an early adopter means you got the cheapest console possible. Like, actually consider that. The PlayStation 5 Digital Edition cost $400 at launch. Now, that same system's like $520 in a lot of regions. It is bizarre because, honestly, this is just, it seems like such a bad business move because, really, why would they keep jumping up the cost? So some people are pointing out very correctly about the cost of the yen, that the dollars over in Japan have been severely devalued a lot over the course of the last 3 years. Their stock market had a weird crash a couple weeks ago and stuff like that. So I think that people trying to defend this, not that Detective Seeds, he's not defending this. He's trying to just give some extra perspective to this. But I think it's even weird to consider the fact that as these consoles get more expensive, my worry is that it's going to hit every aspect of this industry. Games costing $70, in my mind, is already so ridiculously pricey. I like the fact that we're starting to see the return of some levels of $40 games again, but so many games are now trying to sell you a special edition, a pre-order bonus of pay $100 for the game and you could play it 3 days early and stuff like that. Star Wars is actually doing that right now. My point is the fact that as consoles get more expensive, as people start to pay $600 for the base edition, I think this is going to make all parts of gaming more pricey. Like, this is affecting the accessories as well. They're jacking up the cost of controllers, of PSVR, of every single part of it. And this is just super lame because, in my opinion, that means that people that are just trying to get started into the gaming industry, I feel like if you're trying to pick this hobby up, it's becoming more and more prohibitively pricey. I think part of the reason I like video games is that they have gone so mainstream. Like, in my opinion, as a person who grew up playing Pokemon on his Game Boy in secret, the kid who was afraid of talking in the cafeteria about Metal Gear Solid because the jocks would hear me talking about video games and I'd look like a total dork, I like the fact that now everybody knows what Fortnite is. Everybody knows what Grand Theft Auto is. Everybody's excited for the next Doom game and stuff like that. Video games have become mainstream, which is great, but I feel like what keeps things in the conversation is accessibility, is cheap systems, cheap games, stuff that's actually going to be low enough price that you could walk into a Walmart and impulse buy it, at least to some degree. But if this console keeps getting more expensive, which at this point there is no sign of a price cut, I feel like this is bad for business, and it does make me a bit nervous because of the timing of this. So I did a video yesterday talking about the rumors of a PlayStation 5 Pro. There is actually a lot of rumblings that they're about to reveal a PlayStation 5 Pro probably at the end of September with a bunch of big games. There's talks that Hideo Kojima is going to show a bunch of Death Stranding 2 gameplay on the PS5 Pro. And typically, when you release the upgraded version of your system, the previous version gets cheaper, right? If you're releasing the Xbox One X, the Xbox One gets cheaper. If you're releasing the PS4 Pro, the PlayStation 4 gets cheaper. The fact that they are increasing the price of the PS5 right before the release of the PS5 Pro, I think this is very worrying. If that means the PlayStation 5 Pro ends up costing $700, $1,000, $600, I mean, we really have no idea. If the PlayStation 5 is getting this expensive, the base model, I feel like they're going to not price cut things for a very long time. And to me, that just blows. I have been a big proponent of making stuff as cheap as possible, about whatever it takes to make it so that games are not so ridiculously expensive, to make it where dev times aren't so long. Even the development costs of games now is getting longer and longer and longer. And now the fact that console prices keep going up, I just feel like this is a bad sign for the industry in general. And I feel like you can't just say, oh, the value of the dollar, of the yen, of the euro is going down. Yeah, man, money in price is going down everywhere. There's a lot of books written on the topic about the fact that money is getting real busted up right now. But even if you don't want to quote a bunch of economists, I still think that as a gamer standpoint, we don't care about that, right? There's like a quote I heard from some streamer where he said, I don't care how hard the game is to make, I want the game to be good. And I think about that quote a lot because it really does come down to the fact that if your console costs $1,000 and there's no other competition, I mean, I don't care about why it costs so much, I care that it costs so much. PlayStation, I want them to try and find a way to make these systems lower cost. I mean, I'm not calling them liars, but these constant price increases, it still feels like something is amiss. It does feel like they're trying to bump up their bottom line at our expense somehow, and honestly, it just sucks. Price decreases ASAP. That's just some off-the-cuff thoughts. So what do you guys think about this? Is it really a big deal, or do you not really care? And also, I'm always curious about this. How many people are actually interested in the PlayStation 5 Pro? And what's your maximum cost for it? Like, if it costs $700 or $800, is that just outside the realm of possibility? Because honestly, yeah, I'm a cheap ass. If that thing costs $800, I mean, I'll still try and buy it to make videos with it because I am a YouTuber, but yeah, I don't have $1,000 laying around for a console right now.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.